Welcome to the Previously Rockhounding podcast, where we explore the world of rockhounding and lapidary from the ye olden days of the 1970s and 80s through the lens of vintage issues of Rock and Gem magazine.
This episode, we're looking at Rock and Gem magazine from April 1977, the 1977 Rock and Lapidary Guidebook.
I like the guidebooks. I think they're interesting.
I didn't think it was good last year. It felt like it was just all ads, but I thought this year it was better.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's Rock and Gem magazine from the 70s. There's a lot of ads.
Yeah.
I particularly liked the ads in this one. There's, we've had an issue or two where there just wasn't a whole lot to comment on. It was like the same ads repeated from the previous month or previous issue that we read. This one, there's a lot of unique ads in it, which I thought some of them were kind of fun. Example, there's an ad selling rifle oil shale.
Yeah, I noted that one too.
That's a little bit of an odd rock to be selling. I actually have a piece of oil shale out in the shop from Texas, and
rifle is in Colorado.
Yes, yeah, but I have a piece of oil shale, and it's not really lapidary material. I mean, it's exactly what you think. Shale is a very porous rock, and it has crude oil. Which I think, from the perspective of understanding geology, having a piece of oil shale is interesting. It's interesting to be like, this is the type of rock they drill through when doing oil exploration. That's neat. But I certainly would not go and I wouldn't buy it out of it.
I don't know what they're trying to sell it for. Yeah,
I mean, I don't know. But yeah, I thought that was kind of cool. They said it would be good for carving, but I'm like, What are you going to be having a oil shale carving on your mantle? And of what? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. The oil companies were like, get rid of this. And they're like, I'll take it.
Well, I think too, maybe it's just profiteering, right? It's like you see something, if you have it in abundance, on your property, let's say, maybe you just place the ad. Who knows? Maybe somebody will buy it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean.
Another ad also relating to Colorado was not rock related. It was advertising own your own land in Colorado for $29.50 a month. So they didn't say anything. They kind of gave a general area where it was. They didn't say how big the property is. They didn't say whether there's access to it. It was just own your own property for $29.50 a month, which in today's money is $144 a month. So that's pretty cheap. Came out to about $3,000 total, which was about $16,000 total.
It's probably entirely landlocked or something like that. It's not gonna.
I looked the area up on Zillow, and approximately where I assumed that they were advertising for, and there's a lot of 3-acre parcels, and they go for $7,500. Because apparently nobody responded to the ad because there's 3 $6 million homes and then $7,000 parcels.
It reminds me of magazines I saw as a kid where they're own a piece of the Nevada desert for starting at $1 an acre.
Yeah.
And then, I've gone back and looked at some of those, and it's there's no roads, it's landlocked, there's no water, and there's no soil. You can't live on it. You can't graze an animal on it. You can't plant anything, and there's no access. And you're great. If you wanted to do nothing and you own a helicopter, this is the perfect piece of land.
But they didn't even say, there's rocks nearby, easy access to this rock hounding place. They could have put something in there. I bet more people would respond if they're 30 minutes from the $1 Million Rockhounding Trail or whatever that spot was in Colorado. They did a field trip about.
Yeah. There was an ad for MPF Super Showcases, which it's like the tabletop like display box that you would have as like a vendor at a rock show, right? Like, it's
Like a glass.
Yeah, it's
top.
a glass top. And they advertised it as unbreakable glass, made from tempered glass. And the ad had a photo of a woman like squatting on one of their cases. And I thought it was funny because tempered glass is not unbreakable. Like the example, like tempered glass would be like the glass for a car, where when you break it, it just like becomes like 9 million little pieces. Unlike plate glass, which would be like razor sharp shards, definitely not unbreakable. It would be great if we need unbreakable glass in cars, not display cases.
Yes.
But I mean, so what? Like they're advertising unbreakable glass cases for shows, like to prevent theft.
I don't know.
To
like
prevent
somebody just went to another table and they bought like a big rock they're gonna slab up, and they come and look at your jewelry and they fumble and the rock falls down on your case.
I could see that actually. Yeah, sure.
There was an ad for opal, and the ad said the best opal of 2 continents, and then it had a picture of the 2 continents, Australia and Brazil.
Yes.
And just was like only Brazil. They like cut out the rest of South America. It's like, I don't think that's...
It was a full page ad
Yes.
from Princess Gems.
Yes.
And the ad, however, it listed an address on the bottom. And I looked it up, and it's just a normal house.
Huh.
It's not like a commercial space at all. It was just somebody's house. And although this is a little off topic, it was in Federal Way, Washington. And it was a 1,300 square foot home, which seems really small for running a business. I know they're
Yeah.
selling opal, and like, really, how much opal do you need to run a business? But how much do you think the house sold for in 1998?
1,300 square feet, Federal Way. I don't know.
For those that aren't aware, Federal Way, Washington, that's like the Puget Sound, like Seattle kind of area, right? Yeah. Seattle.
Yeah, it's probably a little far to if you like got to commute into Seattle, I think, but it's that Seattle metro. I don't know, 200,000.
$128,000 in '98, and then it sold again in 2022 for $515,000.
It's a big profit.
Yes. Also, Federal Way? No.
Well,
Or over $500,000 to live in Federal Way.
Yeah,
1,300
it's a
square
little.
feet is a little. That's not a ginormous place.
the prices on the opal were high.
And like it was a big range.
Yeah, it was $4 to $80 a gram, which today's prices is $20 to $390 a gram, which that's a lot of money. And I searched on eBay, I forget it was like a specific kind of opal, because there's some, I forgot what term
I think they selling, it wasn't Boulder opal. I don't know.
I forgot, but it was a specific type of opal, and I looked it up on eBay, and it goes for like $1 a gram. Also, it's kind of ugly. I don't know if I think I just might have searched like Brazilian opal, but it was like really yellow, almost like a bright green yellow color, which is not what I think of when I'm paying $80 a gram in 1977 dollars.
So there's two things that kind of come to mind here. It's the price of turquoise and the price of opal. There's more opal and turquoise on the market today than there was in the 70s.
Yeah.
So prices are significantly lower. Also, the economy of scale. Like there's like legit huge, ginormous opal mining operations in like Australia, Ethiopia, and you know that certainly brings the end product cost down when you're using giant machines and all of that. So
the ease of getting it to people, like the guy in Federal Way probably just bought a ton of it and was trying to sell it and get rid of it versus through ads in Rock and Gem magazine or going to a show versus anybody can hop on eBay right now.
Yeah. You also got to think, too, a lot of stuff like this, it doesn't get destroyed, right? Like, every single year, there's opal being mined and then cut into cabs and whatever, set in jewelry, and that goes out into the market. And then the following year, they do it again and again and again. And old stuff can easily get disassembled and repurposed into future jewelry. So although it's in private hands, you see big estates come on the market and it gets resold. And I think the overall trend is still like moving up, but like it can certainly slow down. So there was I haven't really seen many ads up to this point selling mineral specimens, like very specific mineral specimens.
Yeah.
And I did see there were some in this. So there was an ad from Pala Properties.
Yeah,
which
I saw that one.
The Pala mine is a legendary mine in Southern California, San Diego County. It's pink tourmaline.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely stunning. And this mine has such an amazing piece of history behind it. We've talked about it in some previous episodes of the previously Rockhounding podcast. There's books written on it. It's awesome stuff. So I was surprised to see that they were selling it in Rock and Gem because they really didn't need to back then. Like going back, like this stuff was brought over to Europe for royalty. Like it's very premium stuff.
It seemed like some of the ads in this issue were more premium type products, more high priced, more specialty than the normal issues.
Yeah, so I agree. They were selling crystals from the Tourmaline Queen mine, and it was a crystal from 1 inch to 2.5 inches, priced from $20 to $300. Which in today's money is $97 to $1,460, and even still at that price, that's a screaming good deal for a beautiful specimen from the Pala mine. Like, if somebody right now was like, "Hey, do you want this 1 inch pink tourmaline crystal from the Pala mine for $100?" I'd be like, "Yes, I'm going to go make many times that right now." Like, yeah, I don't know if that was just like a bad year for them. I'm not exactly sure of their exact mine history in the 70s, but
I didn't know. I do remember now that we've talked about the Pala mine. It wasn't clear to me that that's what they were selling, because they had those crystals, but then they also had like collection number 1, collection number 2, and they didn't say what it was. I don't know if it's just implied that it was tourmaline, because it just said 20 to 30 pieces of colorful and popular mineral specimens, which to me sounds like it's not necessary. It's going to be different types of mineral specimens, not tourmaline.
True.
So I thought
I feel like
that's
they're selling like 3 things in that ad. There's like there are crystals,
Yeah.
and then collections of other things.
But I thought it was just strange because all they said was 20 to 30 pieces of colorful and popular mineral specimens for $300, which you just said is $1,400 now. Like, who's gonna fork over $1,400 for 20 to 30 colorful, popular mineral specimens? Like,
I think
that's quite the gamble.
I think modern day advertising, they don't make assumptions about the consumers, but in this, there's a lot of assumptions made that you just kind of know. Like, it's in like the popular collective mind at the time. And nowadays, people in advertising, they break out the crayons and talk to everybody like they're 5. And maybe that's better because...
Yeah, I mean, you have a bigger market if you're marketing to everybody.
You probably should do that. So, interesting fact about the Pala mine before we move on. What do you think the largest tourmaline crystal was that they ever pulled?
I have no idea. I mean, is it really big or just kind of big?
6 pounds. That is a very big pink tourmaline crystal. That's like that's really large, really really large.
That is heavy.
Yeah. So yeah, I tried to find some photos of it, but I mostly found like artist renderings
That's
of
weird.
it. I don't know. If anybody
must-
has any photos of the 6-pound tourmaline from Pala, please, you can email it to me. Currently rockhounding@gmail.com. I want to see it.
There was an ad for Slocum Stone, which is a man-made opal. I guess that this was like the beginning of man-made opals, and this was the early one. It was like, it said it's silicate glass with metallic film flakes that gives it the whatever little flakes in the opal. I looked on eBay for it, and there was one ring that had the stone was Slocum stone, but there was nothing available.
How much was the ring?
It's like $20. Yeah, so I guess after this was like made by some guy in Minnesota or something, and kind of right after he made that, other places figured out how to make man-made opal, and it was a lot better than his, so it didn't really take off.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you want to have a rockhound safari?
Yeah, what is that? What do you think when you ask that question? I imagine a rockhound safari means we're going on a trip and you're taking me rockhounding.
No.
Oh.
No. There is an ad selling a safari style leather jacket, which is the ideal rockhound jacket.
Yes.
I feel bad. We're married, and it's on me to always look good for you. And I feel like a 1970s style safari leather jacket is what has been missing this whole time from my wardrobe. For those of you that maybe don't know what a safari style leather jacket is, it's like a longer coat. I would say it's a coat, not a jacket. Jackets usually cut off at the waist, the pant belt line. Coats go a little longer, and then you like cinch it around the middle with a leather belt, like around your belly.
It was expensive.
It was super expensive. So the ad, it was even promoting it as $60 off, making it $119, which that's in $1977. So today, there would have been a $580 coat, which...
I can't imagine spending that much on something I've never seen and potentially can't return.
Yes. I found the exact jacket
Wow.
that they were selling
Really?
in this ad. I found the exact jacket for sale. It was a sold listing on eBay. I actually managed to figure out through a bunch of deducing the manufacturer of the coat, and I found one that was made in 1978, so pretty close. The same coat,
Yeah.
right? We're in 1977 here. And you could buy it sold on eBay for $118
Wow.
in good condition.
So it kept its value almost, if we're not adjusting for inflation.
Yeah, yeah. If we don't do any adjusting, it kept its value. But yeah, I thought I can't remember the last time I've seen somebody wearing a coat like that.
Does not seem, I mean, I guess depends where you're going. Would it be a warm coat? I mean, it's not going to be a cool jacket. So I guess if you're rock hounding where it's mildly cold.
And never wet. Leather jackets
Yeah,
don't do well in
and
the
dry.
rain. I don't. But it reminds me, a little bit, episode or two ago, the Rockhound bag. Like we're just
Yeah.
seeing stuff like repurposed now, like which I thought was mildly amusing.
Yeah, they're just like trying to sell it, and they just contact every magazine, and they're like, Rockhound Safari. Yeah, that sounds right.
Like they have a couple pallets of these coats.
Yeah.
There was an ad for a rock show called Rockorama 77, Maryland's greatest gem and mineral show, which bills itself as having indoor and outdoor exhibits, arts and crafts, retail, wholesale, importers, manufacturers, tailgaters, suppliers, and lapidary equipment. And it would seem that they're also letting people sell in the parking lot, like tailgate sale style, which is something we don't really see much anymore. I mean, yeah, there are tailgate events, like tailgate rock shows, but I kind of think it's kind of cool, the idea of like, oh, we have all these vendors and you spend premium amount of money for a good table and you're indoors and stuff. But it's also kind of cool just the idea of being like,
Bring your rocks.
yeah, have a tailgate
Yeah.
swap. I know when we went to the Mount Hood Rock Club show in Portland, there was like the indoor warehouse space that had been converted for the show, and then the outdoor vendors in the rain, and their spaces were significantly more affordable, being that they were in the
Yes.
rain. And it kind of reminded me of that. If you want to see a video of that show, you can find it over on the YouTube channel, currently Rockhounding on YouTube. So go check that out.
I noticed a lot of ads for rock shows in this issue, and I was noticing all of what times they ended, because we talked about that a couple episodes ago, and a lot of them ended at 10, like 9 or 10.
Yeah, which I think is late.
Yeah.
I don't want to go to 10 o'clock. I want to be in bed.
And there was like the Southern Gem Fest 77 in Atlanta. It was Friday, Saturday, 11 to 10, Sunday, 11 to 6. I'm like, starting at 11 seems kind of late.
Yeah.
I mean, I think like 9 to 7 or 8 seems like a reasonable, but 10, yeah, that's late.
Yeah.
But I think it was, I don't know, maybe just more of like a hangout thing to go, not just like go shop and look at things people are selling. It was more of like a event. So it made sense.
There was another show ad for the Rocky Mountain Federation show, which might be the worst ad I have ever seen. This is
Not great.
It was the most low effort, bad ad. You can check this out for yourself on the website, currently rockhounding.com/podcast. There'll be a photo under show 11.
So
it's literally... Wait, do you want to describe it, or do you want me to describe it?
So it was called the Jamboree.
Yes.
And it was somebody's hand-drawn ad. And you know when you're like writing something larger than you normally do, and maybe you're writing on a sign and you have the word in your head, and you're like, I need to make the letters this big. And so you start, and then you get halfway through, and you're like, oh, wait, I'm 3/4 of the way through the line. And you start making the letters smaller. That's what they did on this ad.
They were obviously drinking
Like
when they
they
produced
couldn't
that.
have tried it again one more time. No, they're like, good enough. The G is 2/3 bigger than the E in Jamboree. Oh well.
It's awful. It's awful. They should be embarrassed. If I saw that, I'd be like, who did this? Who did this? How many beers did they have before mailing this to Rock and Gem magazine?
Why was that the one where they're like, looks good, let's mail this in? Like, no, you're like, okay, I got this idea and I tried it and it didn't quite work, so I'm going to take the things that didn't work and fix them for draft number 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't good.
You have some other ads?
Nope.
Well, let's get into some columns. So, the glory hole this month, it's the editor's column. And he just mostly talked about some different resources that you could have access to, such as an airline to fly down to Baja to go rockhounding, which I thought was funny because if we go back, the editor produced the book, Rockhounding in Baja. There's the Baja issues and all these different field trips down to Baja. Let's think about this, though. So there's an airline that will fly you from America down to Baja in the 70s to go presumably rockhounding. How are you getting around? What's your plan when you're down there? Are you going to just ask a local to take you somewhere? It's not like it's like a all-inclusive, we fly you down and take you somewhere. What was the vehicle rental scene like in middle of nowhere Baja in 1977?
I don't know if they drop you off at an airport, maybe. I have no idea.
I mean, I know now.
I assume there wasn't much because he was like, they just got their first paved road. So I assume there wasn't much in terms of tourist infrastructure.
Yeah. I recall, well, first off, if you drive a car today down to Mexico, you have to get Mexican car insurance. I remember years and years ago when I lived in San Diego, if you wanted to rent a car, there's this car rental place near where I lived in Pacific Beach, and the lot was kind of split in two. There was cars that they approved to go down to Mexico because you could easily just drive down to like National City in Tijuana and like cross in, and these were the junkiest cars. Like, and then they had the cars that they didn't allow you to take into Mexico, and it was like, a nice new Toyota Camry, and then which I find amusing that they were just like, no, like we know something bad's gonna happen here. So they only would let you take the really low quality ones down.
Yeah, maybe that's why you would want to fly in and not risk your own car, I guess.
The Frantic Fumbler column this month started with him saying that the nicer the people are that he meets in the rockhounding world, the more active they usually are in the supporting of rock clubs, which I thought was rather funny because that has not been my experience with rock clubs. I think every person out here listening has had the experience of being an employee at one point in time. You've had a manager at a job. We have all had the experience of having a manager who's only there because they stuck it out longer than other people. And they're in no way qualified to be a manager. Just, they sucked it up longer. And I feel like in many rock clubs these days, that is the current situation. People that, I know we're talking about 1977 and we're not talking about today, and my experience is purely anecdotal here, in no way probably a reflection overall, but a lot of people that are hanging on to rock clubs kind of seem like they're just there out of obligation, and they're like their heart's not really in it, and they're just like, I don't know. That's my own jaded perspective, but
certainly there are nice people involved with rock clubs, and we've met nice people.
Yes,
but
absolutely.
I don't think I would make the same claim that he was making.
Yeah, the column then went on to talk about Margaret Gump of the Columbia Rock and Gem Club in St. Helens, Oregon, and all the different like good things she's done, and went on to like talk about like funny anecdotes of like the caring of pet rocks and how they're being neglected.
Yes.
Because we're now post pet rock fad. So I looked up the club, and they no longer exist.
Yeah.
The club became a nonprofit in March of 1969, and they were registered as a nonprofit out of kind of a really nice house in St. Helens. St. Helens is an hour outside of Portland on the Columbia River.
It's not a very big city.
I don't even know. Is it even a city?
Yeah.
Does it qualify as that? But so it's not a club anymore. I'm not sure. I had a hard time looking up when they may have gone away. But it's interesting people's experiences with rock clubs. They certainly vary. I would never speak in an absolute like, the more you're involved in a rock club, the nicer you are. Like, that's possible, sure. But it could also be the exact opposite, and that like you're a total jerk face involved in a rock club.
Yeah, I mean, people of all types get involved in stuff.
Yeah. Our last column here, shop talk. So this shop talk, they were talking about mineral cleavage and fracture. And I kind of get the direction they're going with it. I don't necessarily think it's very applicable for most people, but pretty much they were talking about how a rock or mineral will cleave or fracture, like example, conchoidal fracturing, and using that as an indication of whether or not something will take a good polish. And I'm like, I think most people can handle a rock and tell you if it's just going to take a good polish or not. Like things that are crumbly, don't. Things that are not crumbly, do. And it seemed like a little bit of a stretch,
Some of the advice in it seemed not 100% good. At one point, he said, if you have a rock and you want to know if it's going to polish, if it's got extreme dullness or a chalk-like appearance, it means it won't polish. But if you want to really know, you can do your own in-the-field hardness test. Hit it with a hammer or another rock. If it clinks or sounds hard, it should be okay and you can polish it.
No.
What does sounding hard mean? If I hit our table with a hammer, I mean, it would sound hard, but what's the hardness of a wooden table? It's not high.
So the only way that you can really test the hardness of stuff is with a Mohs hardness pick set. Everything else is not as good. Even the little images, there's like the popular infograph that is out there of like testing hardness of rocks and minerals with like common items, like a copper penny and a nail and this and that. And I've tested those things and it varies wildly amongst those things. Obviously, 100% copper penny from like, I think pennies pre-1982 were all copper. Everything after is like a zinc composite alloy, whatever thing. But all the other steps above it, there's so much variation between like a steel nail.
Yeah.
Like a steel nail from one manufacturer to another will have a different hardness. So don't mean it's all junk. You have to buy a pick set and just bite the bullet on it if you actually want to test the hardness of stuff. Going based upon the thud sounds, I'm like, I get it. I get the concept, right? Like, if you go and take a hammer and you ping it on a piece of jasper, it sounds different than the sidewalk.
Sure.
But that is, like, that's not like you can't, I don't know, it's just, don't do that. Just don't do, how about just not? Like, I could give you plenty of rocks that, what about a thunder egg, right? A thunder egg, which has generally like jaspers and calcimony on the inside, but just a cruddy rhyolite exterior, usually a weathered rhyolite exterior, the rhyolite can take a great polish often. Often it can take an amazing polish, but looks like very porous and flaky and chalky, and often you have clays packed on the outside. And so it's not a foolproof method of...
It doesn't seem like a very good method at all.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe, I guess you could, but also just like, is that telling you anything your eyes can't tell you?
Your eyes should just be able to tell you pretty soon into your rockhounding career.
Didn't seem like, I guess he was talking about polishing rocks ultimately. It wasn't very shop focused for shop talk.
I do think, though, from the aspect of identification, which isn't really what the shop talk column was going after, understanding cleavage and fracture as a means to help hone in an identification of something is really good, because those are things that you can observe with your eye and you don't really need anything. Maybe a jeweler's loop if it's small, but, kind of looking at stuff and being like, oh, is this cleaving like how generic calcite will cleave off in like that kind of I can't think of the name. Oh, whatever. Or, obsidian with its like conchoidal fracturing can be an indicator. So understanding that is good advice, but hitting stuff and listening to the tone, not so much. The first article in this issue, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And it was how to write a field trip article.
Is that what it said? An article about how to write a field trip article. I get it.
And
it came with the warning, the first part. This article contains strong opinions.
Oh, I love a strong opinion. I love a strong opinion, especially about this topic.
So, the people who wrote this article make maps. I didn't look, but they're like, you can buy our maps. See page 113. It's those maps we talked about, like Southern California.
Yes.
So they obviously have experience being out in the field, making maps. A lot of the article was dedicated to making an accurate map, but they also just talked about how to write a good story.
Well, there's also a large portion of the article complaining about other field trip writers
Yes.
and their lack of knowledge and their inability to make a map of the location that they're talking about in the trip report. And I find it to be so funny how few things change over
Yeah.
time. This is 1977, mind you. And that he's like basically scolding people like they're dumb little children for not understanding how to give directions, produce a map, convey information in any type of meaningful way, which is a problem we still have today. I mean, people don't generally make maps, but we do see maps in guidebooks.
We see plenty of less than stellar maps.
Yes.
Should photocopy this article and send it to everybody who's ever written something about rocks.
I like that idea.
Highlight some parts for them. Be like, so, I mean, some of the advice was very practical and not heated. Like, don't use a tree as a landmark. Don't use, like, oh, buy the big rose bushes. Like, use things that aren't going to go away. Oh, those things on the side of the road that say mileage or say numbers on them, those are mileage markers. Use those because they're not going to go away. Like, stuff like that.
I absolutely have never thought about the fact that older vehicles did not have resettable odometers.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. And he said you should go to the store, buy a resettable odometer. Also, like, odometers in your car might not be accurate. And, you know, when you're driving, you see those odometer check spots. Like, who would ever do that? Like, your car's, you know.
It's all digital.
Yeah,
now.
but he was like, make sure you do that. And, you know, if your odometer's off by 0.2 mile but off by a fifth of a mile, now we've gone 5 miles and you've gone more, or whatever, you know.
Yeah,
like,
he was talking about, like, you want to reduce the margin of error.
Yeah.
And as an example, if you're even with your resettable odometer, if you leave a highway as an example and you go 1.3 miles, usually they were only going to the 10th of a mile.
Yeah.
So where are you between 1.3 and 1.4, you know? So like after each thing reset it so that you don't have compounding error.
Yeah.
Which all great advice.
We rarely, even when we follow directions and they're like, go this far, this many miles, and then turn this many miles, they're rarely spot on. We're always like, okay, it says 0.6, we're at 0.7, so this must be the turn. Or like, I don't think we've really ever seen good, maybe our car odometer's the problem. I don't think so.
I'm going to go off topic just a second here. There is a guidebook coming out in 2022 that in September it's like state rockhounding book. And I am super looking forward to getting this. I am like, I'm slightly foaming at the mouth here for it because 2022, we have access to Gaia GPS, Onyx, massive amounts of mapping software, data. Google Earth is free. We have GPS that is super, super precise. There is no longer...
And very affordable.
There is no longer an excuse. Almost everybody listening to this has a smartphone. You can have Google Maps on there, and you can get exact GPS to where you're at.
Sometimes Google Maps GPS, it goes so many numbers after the decimal, I have to delete them because it's too accurate.
Yeah, and that's Google. And Google's not even... In the world of GPS, they're ranked at the bottom, right?
Yeah.
There's so many better services and whatever out there. My point being, a modern guidebook better have accurate landowner information and accurate GPS. They better be using decimal GPS because there's no longer an excuse. There shouldn't ever be a point where you're like, I don't know. Is it 0.5 mile or 0.8 mile? Turn at the big rock. Like, no. Like, I'm going to be like this guy in 1977 wagging my finger and looking down upon this person if they drop the ball on this because there's no excuses.
Yeah.
No excuses.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to photocopy this article and mail it to them.
Kind of similarly on the subject of people writing rock hunting books, he said in this article that map makers sometimes incorporate purposeful errors called a hooker to show if somebody's copied their maps. Mm-hmm. And we have noticed errors in rock hounding books. Let's say there's a state and there's 2 different books for it. The error is in both books. Now, I don't know if Rockhounding guidebook authors are putting hookers in their books, but it's disappointing to see an error printed and then duplicated and not caught. So I thought that was interesting. I didn't realize that a map maker would purposely put an error in their map so that they could be like, ha, you stole my map. But then, like, what are you going to do? How are you going to catch someone if you're like, you stole my map? I mean, if you're like, hey, I put my GPS in decimal coordinates and you used, feet, minutes, degrees? And when you convert them, they're the exact same.
Feet, minutes, there's multiple GPS formats, and decimal is the superior format. I mean, what is it? You're never supposed to attribute to malice what you could attribute to stupidity. So.
Well, I mean, you're stupidly copying somebody else's map versus maliciously copying it. Like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, either way, it's not responsible to copy somebody else's work.
Yeah,
and put it out there as your own, especially if it contains errors. I thought also another point, I mean, they made so many good points in this article. So much of it, I was like, this is so true. Why has nobody learned this? This was 1977. Really should, scan this and keep a digital copy, and then we can just email it to everybody.
Yeah.
Like he said, people will be like, oh, this spot, you go 9 miles outside of town, and then you take a turn right to the north. And he was like, okay, what is 9 miles outside of town? The middle of town? As soon as you get out of the town? What if your town is 2 miles wide? What does that even mean? And I've definitely...
What if you write that in this year, and then there's a city limit expansion?
Sure.
You know?
I mean, I normally... Yeah, so... I encounter that so much, and I'm always like, I don't know, middle of town? What's the middle of town? What is this even?
GPS, having a planet surrounded by satellites that can, I was going to say triangulate, but they don't do that, can pinpoint things is such an amazing quality of life change that has happened in my lifetime, because I want to say GPS came out in 91. It was U.S. military developed for the Gulf War, I believe. I don't know. You can. That's my layperson understanding of it, but yeah, no, it's amazing that we can just be like right here, boom.
Yeah. He also, the author, mentioned some suggestions for photos. They're like, take some photos of the site. Make sure there's some sort of person or vehicle so that you have a sense of scale, and take some photos of the material.
My brain is breaking.
You should probably scan this whole article and just put it up so everybody can read it. It was really good.
There is so many times that I see stuff and people are like, oh, this is the most amazing petrified wood, the world's greatest agate location. And you're like, cool, do you have any photos of the stuff or the material or anything? And they're like, no. I'm like, Wow. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Like that's super helpful when you're like 10 miles out of town along the old road. The best material ever seen. No photos.
Yeah. Oh, I find that material all the time. It's all over. And you're like, cool, do you have a picture? And they're like, no. No, I find it daily, though. It's everywhere. Sitting on a pile of it. I don't have a picture, though. Why would I have a picture? How would I even do that?
I have a 2,000-pound gold nugget in my backyard. Just believe me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just trust me. Like, maybe I'll send you a blurry photo of something yellow and call it gold.
He did mention in the article about, like, other rock magazines, which I was like, what? How many other rock magazines were there at this time? Was there a lot?
I think some of their main competition was the Lapidary Journal.
Right.
And then there was Rock and Mineral magazine.
Oh.
And then there was Mineral Digest was happening, which I have some Mineral Digest.
Mineral Digest seems like a different
It's a different
topic, kind of. It's more specialized.
Yes.
Same with Lapidary versus Rock and Gem is like a
The
general
Lapidary
interest.
Journal does have like some field trip stuff in it, but yeah,
It sounds more serious.
yes.
Lapidary Journal.
Yeah. Mineralogical Record was happening at
Yeah.
this point in
Also
time.
sounds more serious.
Yes, I would say that.
I would have higher expectations for those.
But he was basically saying that the editors will have different standards, especially when it comes to private property, because some will be like, yeah, you get permission. Other, there's abide by signage, and some would be like, doesn't matter, we'll just publish it. We need content. So
yeah, the article finished out with like making a good story, but not too much of a story to distract from your trip report, your field trip, and also like make sure you submit it to a magazine and like make a photocopy so that if you send it in and they don't like it, you still have it, or like send a self-addressed envelope so they'll mail it back to you. I mean, there's some practical advice also.
The next article was a pretty simple one, a basic bezel. So it's a pretty simple article, which we've seen many times. It's kind of like the how-to style of article. And this one was how to do some pretty entry-level silversmithing and how to make a bezel to set a stone in. And that.
I didn't think it was much, so I didn't.
Yeah, it was just, it
was basic.
Yeah, I mean, silversmithing isn't really something that happens like it used to. I mean, I know people are still doing silversmithing. That's still a thing. But yeah, it was just kind of a little how-to article. The next article of more substance was a field trip. I know we just got done like ragging on all these field trips.
This was a very good field trip.
Yeah,
article.
So field trip, yellow cat flat and cactus rat was the name of it. Uranium and vanadium near Utah's Arches National Park.
So it's like,
we've never been to Arches.
No, when we went on our trip to Utah, this was a spot that I definitely knew about, but it's more eastern Utah, like central eastern, and it was just going way out of your way, and it didn't really fit. But after reading this article, I'm like, oh, we should. If we go back to Utah, when we go back, we got to go to this spot because they made it sound very appealing.
Yeah. We're not allowed to go into Arches National Park because we're not influencing enough or van lifing enough.
Oh.
I know that I've seen some great photos and videos of Arches where they're like people influencing out in the wild at the Arches, and then you turn back and there's just like 9 million people taking photos.
Well, I doubt there's 9 million people at Yellow Cat Flat.
I feel like that would be a safe assumption.
Well, it sounded like a great place. I mean, they had jasper, agate, petrified wood, dinosaur bones, gastroliths.
That's a topic I want to talk about. So, I think first off, this would be an excellent spot to go to.
It's got it all. It's got everything. Great variety of stuff.
I question the validity of the Gastroliths?
So, yeah, the gastroliths. So, gastroliths are a rock that a dinosaur ate.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the dinosaur died, it is left over.
Yes. And one of the...
It's also called the gizzard stone.
Yeah, one of the things that how people will, I don't want to say identify, because I don't think they're doing a very good job of it, is if you're in an area without any type of alluvial rounded rock, these small stones that in theory a dinosaur ate, so that would help them like digest and like process food, like having a rock rolling around in your stomach.
Or they just accidentally ate it.
Or just accidentally.
There's a good picture on Wikipedia of like a dinosaur with like a mouthful of like grass, and then there's a rock sticking in it, and he's just like, "Huh, what?"
Yeah. So when you see a rounded rock where there are no other rounded rocks, they're like, that was in a dinosaur's belly, and I'm like, that.
Yeah.
How, I have seen so many random river tumbled rocks in places where there's no others. Was that in the belly of a dinosaur? I think we should go with the most logical conclusion, unless evidence says otherwise. And I've yet to see any good way of 100% identifying like a gizzard stone, like a whatever.
I mean,
unless you're like a paleontologist and you're digging up a semi-complete skeleton,
and you see it,
and it's like within that.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I'm like, I
mean, there are dinosaur tracks and dinosaur bones that have been found in that area.
Sure.
Like, there is a lot out there, so it is certainly plausible that there are gastroliths. But yeah, I mean, that seems pretty lucky that you just found it and you're like, yep, that's what it is. I mean, the identifications, yeah, it just said it's rounded. Theoretically, it's polished more on top, because if it's sitting in their like stomach, like the food comes down and polishes the top, but I don't get why it wouldn't move around a little. There's no polish in the crevices. Those were the ways to identify. That seems hard to know in the field. They also like found a dinosaur bone, which you can't find I mean, can you collect a dinosaur bone? You're not supposed to, right? I mean, it's a vertebrate fossil.
It depends on the property.
Oh.
And so that would depend on, like, are we state, federal, private? Like, there's a lot of rules and regulations surrounding the collection of fossils. So it's something that you should be mindful of. Anyways, I would go there. I thought that was pretty cool. Like, put the Geiger counter to use, find some radioactive things.
Tons of mines out there.
Yes, yeah. We'll maybe have to add that to a future Utah trip.
Yeah. It was a good article. They hit all the points in the previous article of, I don't remember, was there a map?
I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, it was a good story, and they did a good balance of like.
There was a map. Actually, I take that back. There was.
I forgot.
There was. Moving right along, Rock and Gems Lapidary of the Year, which has.
Now they do Lapidary of the Month every month, and we skip it because it's like one paragraph. This one was much more extended and very interesting.
Yeah, I thought this was pretty good. The 1977 Lapidary of the Year was Spokane's Dorothy Roadrock, and they said that she has all the credentials to be a Lapidary of the Year. So it's kind of like an artist's profile. And I liked the background that they gave. First off, some of her stuff is absolutely amazing looking. There will be some photos of it up on the website, currently rockhounding.com/podcast, under show number 11. So, Dorothy and her husband first got into the rock thing by going to Peterson's Rock Garden. Which,
I thought that was such a good...
If you're a viewer of the YouTube channel, we recently put up a video about Peterson's Rock Garden, and addressed some of the controversy of the Peterson's Rock Garden in Central Oregon and it being sold and being ran by meth heads and all of that stuff. Well, Dorothy and her husband Chuck, I believe, I didn't write it down, but I think it was Chuck.
Yeah.
They went there in 1957, and they were so amazed that it was the hook that got sunk for them. And 5 months later, they joined the Spokane Rock Rollers, which is our local rock club, and they were members of the Rock Rollers for a very, very long time. She then went on to start teaching lapidary from her house in 1969. So basically, it could be like 10 to 12 years later after going to Peterson's Rock Garden, she's now instructing. And did you look up any information on Dorothy?
I think she has passed away. If she
Dorothy?
hadn't, she would be 99.
Yes. The best I could tell from looking at obituaries, I believe she passed away in 2013.
Oh.
So
Quite an achievement to be Lapidary of the Year, teaching out of your house. It said her husband taught at the college here.
yeah, he was a teacher at Spokane
He
Falls.
was like an art teacher.
I wasn't able to look up anything in reference to that, but maybe I bet you contacting the college could probably be like,
They'd be like, "Yep, he worked here."
yeah, I don't know, just go get a yearbook.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know how.
Do they have?
Do they keep? Does a school keep records like that? A community college?
Probably. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I thought that was a really great story. I thought it was great timing that they went to Peterson Rock Garden, and that's what started them into rocks. And we went to Peterson Rock Garden a couple weeks ago. And
well, we also went years ago.
we didn't. When we went years ago, we weren't. We didn't feel like, oh wow, I really want to get into rock hounding and collect rocks. I don't think that was the takeaway we got from going there. I think if we had had more information or like backstory on it, like, oh, he collected all those rocks himself. If we had gone there with people who were experienced rock hounds and they can be like, this is from here, this is from here, this is from here, maybe we would have been more like, oh, that's more interested by it.
It's definitely lacking in its educational resources. Or no, what they need there at Peterson's is to have owners that aren't high, and then clean the place, mow everything, fix everything, and then put informational plaques up.
Yeah.
And do like a guided thing, walk this path, listen to this
like the
audio file,
interpretive trail type deal.
Put some signage up and be like, do
Yeah.
that. But definitely go check out the Peterson's Rock Garden video. I have photos up on the website, all kinds of good stuff. It's very, very cool. Moving right along, we have another artist's profile, and I liked this one.
Yeah.
The 3D inlay of Jerry Klein, and his stuff is amazing. I'm not typically impressed by people's jewelry, both because I'm not big into jewelry, and I feel like a lot of the stuff that we see, it's very generic. It's very challenging, I think, for a lapidary to stand out amongst everyone else, and he definitely stood out amongst everyone else.
Yeah, his jewelry was really different. It wasn't like, here's a cab and I put it into this setting. It was little pictures.
So I would compare it more to tiny stained glass.
Yeah, it really looked like stained glass, but small.
Yeah, very, very cool stuff. So pretty much he would draw something like a bird. You draw a bird and then take strips of silver and take that kind of outline stencil and make a silver stencil and then solder it all together and then cut stones that would fit into that. So it does look very stained glass-ish, and I think to untrained eye, if you didn't recognize it as being rock, you could be like, oh yeah, that's glass. So flawless.
Yeah.
I thought that was very, very impressive to see something like that.
Yeah.
You know, I don't see many people doing inlays or mosaic work, and when I do, it certainly stands out above all the other wire wrapped 30 by 40 oval cabs.
Yeah.
You know.
I didn't really understand 3D.
Yeah, I didn't.
It was like some of the things in the image he would use either nothing in it or more silver in it. Like I think the raccoon's it was a raccoon that is what he made in the article, and the nose was silver instead of a rock, and somehow that made it 3D. I didn't really get that part, but it was cool. Cool stuff.
And then it was immediately followed up by the most dull and boring article, The ABCs of Cabochon Making, where they talk about making an oval cab. Which, I mean, you got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
I've made oval cabs. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's definitely not the peak of lapidary skill. So,
Yeah.
you know, I feel like it lacks in creativity, and, you know, it's good skill building. I'm glad that I've made some, and I took those skills that I learned in that process and I moved on to other and different things. So
There's a couple things that seemed a little filler-ish in this issue. There's a couple just like lists. Like they had a list of all the articles from previous Rock and Gem magazines that were about opal. It's
Yeah.
like that's no context, just there it is. And they did reference old issues of Rock and Gem in it.
I wonder if they have like a
number of
backlog.
times.
They have like a backlog of old issues sitting around. They need to sell
well,
them.
we did. They were in the last issue you read. I didn't see that in this issue. They also had a list of faceting instructors, and they also had a quiz. Did you take the quiz?
I didn't.
It was just 10 questions.
Let's hear him.
Oh, I didn't write down the whole questions. They were long. I wrote down my answers so I could check my answers. I only got 3 out of 10. Did you see the quiz? Do you remember seeing it?
I remember seeing
You didn't even take it. Well, I guess we're not going to talk about compare. Well, I did better than you because you didn't even try, and I got 3.
Well, how about this? On the next episode of the podcast, we're going to do the quiz, and we'll talk about the results of the
I
quiz.
already did the quiz.
Okay,
You're going to
I'll
do the quiz.
I'll do the quiz.
Yeah, a little fillery. The next article was, I don't know if this was a filler article. It was kind of a stretch. Rockhound Wheels. For
Oh my gosh, this is the best.
1977.
This is almost the best. The best is the how to write a field trip
Okay,
article.
all right.
Rockhound Wheels for 1977 is pretty much a buyer's guide to buying a new truck or 4-wheel drive vehicle, and it's great. It's great. I love this era. This era for vehicles is top notch, right? All vehicles before the mid to late 70s and after have been trash. Our vehicles today, trash. Our Subaru, junk. We're going to buy a new Subaru, it's going to be junk. You know why it's going to be junk? Because it's not a 1977 CJ, Renegade, or Golden Eagle with a giant eagle painted on the hood. That makes it entirely awesome.
Oh.
So, like, for those of you that don't know, the Jeep CJs of the 70s, they had different paint schemes, some of which were like the Golden Eagle, the Renegade, the Sierra, and like they're super awesome. And we're also in the era of square-bodied trucks.
Yeah, they were they're very distinctive.
I love a square-bodied truck. After reading this, I went this morning and I was watching an episode of Fall Guy with Lee Majors, which is awesome. He does so many sweet jumps in a square-bodied Chevy in that show. The best. Anyways, so they talked about some of the different vehicles that you could buy that would be really good for going rock hounding, like your Jeep CJ Golden Eagle Edition, your Chevy C10 with a step-side bed, which those look super cool. Who doesn't want
is
the steps?
that?
It's like the bed of the truck. It's like more narrow, and you can see a wheel well on the exterior of the truck, kind of like as opposed to the wheel well being on the interior of the bed, and has a little step, and you can like easily get into the bed of your truck, and it's like very classic looking. Ford Broncos, or one of my personal favorites, which would be the best vehicle for us, which would be a diesel International Scout 2. The Scout 2s are the best vehicle ever made. Objective, measurable, the best thing. No computers, right? Diesel, and no emission regulations. So, if you're in the market for a rockhounding vehicle, a 1977 International Scout 2 is the best. Everything else is subpar. Sorry, everybody.
Sure.
Can we paint an eagle on our car?
An eagle?
Yeah, golden eagle.
Yeah, if you want
Your hesitation says yes.
If you want everybody to know everywhere you go, if you want people on the internet to be like, I saw the eagle car, look. Yes.
Okay, since we're on the topic of vehicles, if you need, we now know that the Scout 2 is the best Rockhound vehicle. Both, that's my opinion, and the expert professional opinion of the author of Rockhound Wheels for 1977. Alternative good vehicles, the IROC Z. That's more of a street vehicle, though. But they did also talk about like some like imports in this. They like talked about Subaru. They talked about the Wagoneer. But come on. If you're time traveling to 77, nobody's buying a Subaru. Nobody wants a wait, was the Brat around? Oh, it doesn't matter.
I don't think so.
It was pretty good. Yeah. Well, one last article, and it's insane. Deep down luxurious mining. It may well be best in your own backyard. And I feel like this person, I don't even know how to describe this.
They wrote 4 articles for Rock and Gem and submitted them. The pages got mixed up, and Rock and Gem was like, oh, we need an ending article, we ran out of material, but we still have more ads. This thing that they submitted, and they're like, don't even read it, just put it straight in.
This thing was completely crazy. It was like a wacky article that like ranged from like going out to a mine in the 1800s.
There's a lot of talk about like mining in Maine.
Yeah.
And then there's talk about using rocks that you have in your own house, and I think they meant things that you had already collected, and like rediscovering them and washing them and
it was all over the place. It was completely
displaying
nonsensical.
them in your house, and yeah, it was hard to follow. I don't know what the point was. I didn't understand the title was referencing to. It was a very not easy to read. Didn't end on a strong point. Really started on a strong point with that field trip guide.
Yeah. No, I thought overall
a weak spot.
April 1977 was a good issue of Rock and Gem magazine. Next time on the previously Rockhounding podcast, we'll be looking at Rock and Gem magazine from June 1977. Special Summer Rockhounding, Nevada Chalcedony, Florida Flints, Texas Selenites, and Wyoming Agates.
That's pretty good. Leaving Southern California a little.
Texas.
Florida.
Next time.